How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 4 of What If Deku Had a Leveling System. And now, before I begin, I would like to ask you all to please consider subscribing, as it really helps this channel out, and you can even be notified when this channel does upload, so you can be notified when the other parts of the series or other series do end up coming out. And now, let's begin. The dark, shadowy figure standing across from Izuku would finally reveal their quirk, as a bright blue fire would explode out from their hand, revealing their face. It was one of the villains named Dabi, who had been seen interacting with the League of Villains. Izuku would assume with the League of Villains, however, he wouldn't care that, as he would rush in, punching Dabi in the gut. However, he wouldn't react by this before slamming both of his hands right into the sides of Izuku, sending fire barreling down to him, burning Izuku's suit, or the sides of it, that is. Izuku would jump back, wincing in pain from the burns, before jumping right at Dabi, punching him right across the face, before getting out his angelic sword while his hand was down by his side, slashing at Dabi, a cut mark going right across his cheek, going down to around the top half of his chest. As blood would slowly start coming out of it, Dabi wouldn't end up caring, before punching Izuku square in the chest, punching him across the face, and then punching him once again. Izuku would dodge many of Dabi's punches, however, before grabbing his sword with his one hand and his other, slamming the side of the blade right into his eyes, as the blade would end up marking both where his eyes were, as end up jumping backwards, holding his face in pain, before opening his eyes back up, jumping right back at Izuku. However, right as he was reaching out for Izuku to blast him with blue fire, Izuku would slash upwards with his sword, as Dabi's hand would fall down to the ground. So Dabi would look at it just in shock. He'd pick up his hand with the other one, throwing it at Izuku, causing a distraction, before with his other hand he would slam it right into Izuku's face, sending tons of fire right into Izuku's face. Izuku would wince in the pain once again, would yell out, as he would jump back before cutting himself with angelic sword, causing for his wound on his face to heal, along with the other burns. Dabi would end up looking at Izuku's wounds were starting to heal, before he would just end up laughing. I'm not gonna deal with you right now. So, Izuku, the boss, Shigaraki his name is, he said he wanted to speak with you. I'm guessing you're also curious, and you want to speak with him too, don't you? I've heard about the incident at the USJ. So I presume you want to speak more on him, about all of the things he's possibly yelled out there, don't you? Izuku would nod his head, sensing that there was no killer intent in Dabi, and so he would decide to follow him, as Dabi would end up just having Izuku follow him where the League of Villains hideout was. As Izuku would end up making it there, Izuku would end up just listening through Shigaraki's story. Ah, I see, Dabi, you were able to get him here. That's quite good. I believe you've managed to get him all the way over here. Well, anyway, so now, Izuku, I'm presuming you wonder why I yelled out that all I wanted to do was become a hero, aren't you? Well, the sad truth is, I wanted to become a hero. However, I was expelled from the high school that you go to now. Our principal expelled me after I badly injured someone. It wasn't my fault, of course. The teachers said for us to go all out, and so I listened to their instructions. And when I did an injured student, even when I stopped when they told me to, they still didn't care and expelled me. And now you're probably wondering about what All Might was saying, huh? Well, throughout my time at UA, and even a couple months before then, I remember All Might telling me that with my villainous quirk I could never become a hero. So why not show All Might? Show him that I'll become what he said I'd be. just a villain. Because I'm just a villain in his eyes because of my quirk. Because my quirk is who I am, apparently. Izuku would look on intently at Shigaraki, nodding his head. Well, that's quite the situation you got here. Izuku would look on towards Dabi before asking him why he's in the League of Villains. Dabi would end up explaining his entire story about how he's one of the sons of Endeavor and how he's just being scarred by him for Endeavor overworking him a ton and his flames would burn him and this and that. Izuku would just be confused. The top two heroes have blemishes on their career, and quite the severe ones too. The number one hero who says anyone can be a hero has just told someone they couldn't become a hero because they don't have a heroic quirk. And Endeavor, the number two hero, had just had one of his own children run away? How come he's never heard of something like this in the news? It just was so confusing. Who was just confused how the heroes were able to get away with hiding all of this information that could take them down, and yet it was all hiding right under the public's noses. Suku's there would end up hearing Shigaraki speak once again. So, I was intrigued why you managed to fight All Might and somehow be able to defeat him. Because you don't want us villains to die, huh? Well, even though you had sympathy for me. Why? Shigaraki would say as Izuku would look towards him. That's quite the question you asked, Shigaraki. It's because why would he could have easily captured you, yet he chose to brutally beat you up for no reason at all. Just the fact that you were there and labeled as a villain. And you saying that you wanted to become a hero and how he told you could never be a hero, it just threw me off. And so I decided I'd try to do something and stop him. Shigaraki would nod his head before thanking Izuku, as Izuku would say that it's best if he were to go, as he can't be caught here at a villain hideout, and he doesn't want to be expelled from his just a dream school of UA. Izuku would leave the villain hideout, just more confused than anything about how all of those heroes were able to just get away with all of this stuff that just seemed like they shouldn't be able to get away with. And the fact that these huge, high-leveling and high-ranking heroes at that, too, were able to get away with it, it just boggled Izuku's mind. It didn't make sense to him. So while all of this was happening, he is Izuku walking back throughout the city, as he would end up seeing cop cars rush down the street in a familiar direction. It was the direction that Todoroki had gone in. Izuku would start to follow the cop cars, where he would be led into an alleyway, where he would see Ida being lifted up into an ambulance, while he would see Todoroki being bandaged up, talking to a couple of police officers. As moments before, Todoroki had found Stain right about to kill their classmate, Tenya Ida. He had managed to stop Stain enough, and the fight would end up beginning between him and Stain. However, he would just decide, after being on the ropes with Stain constantly on the attack, to just freeze him entirely, and just have to deal with property damage, as the Todoroki family was quite the wealthy one, and they could easily deal with all of the property damage. So it didn't really matter to him, and Izuku would walk up to Todoroki, asking him what he had done. So he would just explain that he had managed to defeat the hero killer Stain, and that Stain was, however, taken away by a Nomu, one of those Nomu-looking things, as that villain called it. It was flying, so I guess they have flying Nomus now. And it just grabbed him and flew off. I wasn't able to get him when they were trying to tie him up. So sadly, the hero killer's still on the loose. He would say, as Izuku would only nod his head. Yeah, that does suck. Izuku would say, as Todoroki would nod his head. Yeah, it does. There's really nothing I can do about it either. As that would be happening, we now see Izuku walking over he would and see Bakugo just talking with Endeavor. Izuku would ask Bakugo what he had done, as he would then explain that he had an encounter with just with a bunch of Nomus, and with Endeavor, they were easily able to defeat all of them. So, as all of that would just be happening, and with all of the explaining, we now cut forward 2 weeks, as it is now the final week, or finals week for the UA students. As they would all walk in, it would end up being given their written exam, as they saw would watch over them, making sure that they didn't cheat. As they would all doing that, not cheating, knowing that if they were caught cheating, they'd have to go through tons of summer school. So would just go through the entire 10-hour test, which was long, grueling, and painful. However, they were easily able to get through it. It was just quite boring. So with that now finished, we now see Izuku and the rest of his class getting their hero costumes on so that they can begin with the final exams, as Izuku was going to be pitted up against All Might. Since Izuku and Bakugo were the two strongest students as of the sports festival, they were going to go up against UA's just strongest teacher. So as Izuku and Bakugo would be walking over to where they were going to begin their final exam against All Might for the year, Izuku would end up explaining to Bakugo how they need to have a plan. Bakugo would agree with Izuku, saying that they should possibly go in it together, or they should try to just have someone go for someone to throw off All Might, who say someone's right in the middle of the road, but they're not the real attack. It's only to throw him off so someone can go up and just get him from the behind, which would be a lot easier than facing him full on. Bakugo would nod his head, saying that plan could work. However, they'd have to be insanely quickly they'd have to work insanely quickly if they wanted to manage to defeat All Might. So with that, they would end up stretching before being told to walk into the city. As this would be happening, all of a sudden, a shining golden figure would come raining down from the sky before slamming a punch right at the feet of Bakugo, as it would then grab Izuku by the neck, twirling around, slamming him into one of the buildings before going right after Bakugo. Many of the students and their classmates would look on just in shock. It was like All Might wasn't going easy on them at all, even though they're still students in first years too. It was just merciless. They couldn't believe it. How could All Might be doing something like this without feeling any regret for that? Nesu would also see All Might looked like he was going 100% and would end up telling All Might to settle down. However, All Might had taken out his earpiece as it had been blown up by Bakugo, who had started to struggle. As All Might be doing this, would end up hearing Izuku coming from the behind, as he would end up kicking around, punching Izuku right in the chest, sending him flying backwards. Izuku would say that he had enough of this, and forgetting about all of his ideals belonging to the demonic sword. Getting it out of his inventory, he would now wield it in his hand before walking it towards All Might, as the edge of the blade would hit the ground, creating small cracks within the concrete, as the essence would slowly seep into the cracks, as all of the sudden Izuku's arm would end up just going completely black, as his completely black and scarred right arm, now Izuku's eyes would go bright black, or a dull black. Izuku had a complete enough of being beaten on by All Might, and Izuku could tell the intent of All Might. All Might wasn't doing this just to teach them a lesson. He was doing this for some sort of sick twist or sick joke that he likes or something, to beat up the people. Is this why he became a hero or something? Izuku just didn't understand it. So right as Izuku would lift up the blade, he would snap his fingers on the left hand as spikes would come protruding out of the ground, breaking up the concrete along with many of the buildings on that street. As these huge spikes would end up digging through the ground, as Izuku would be sitting on top of the spike, completely losing all of his ideals and just everything, his mind entirely within this sort of mode, having enough of being beaten by someone who would just kill off a villain and not think twice about it. As this was happening, these spikes would stop right in front of All Might as stairs would be made. Izuku would walk on the stairs as All Might would end up jumping forward and going for a punch. However, a spike would jump up, blocking it from hitting Izuku. Now, that's not very nice of you, All Might. Why don't you go ahead and chillax a little bit? Don't you know you should wait until someone reaches the bottom of the stairs before attacking them? No? Well, who cares? Izuku would say as the spike would end up falling down as Izuku would jump off from where he was on the stairs, punching All Might square across the face before grabbing his sword, lifting it up, slashing upwards on All Might, seeing a massive just strike and slash right through half of All Might. As the cut was deep, All Might would grip his stomach in pain, or Izuku would end up punching All Might square across the face as he would then fall down to both of his knees, completely weak by Izuku's attack. All Might, when will you learn your lesson? Izuku would say before kneeing All Might right in the head before capturing All Might using cork-canceling tape. As all of a sudden, all of the spikes would end up protrude even bigger as the demonic sword be put away, as it was as if Izuku was fighting to get back into his body, or something. Izuku would end up breathing heavily after coming out of that mode, as he would pull out the angelic sword, throwing it at the spikes, as it would then end up dispersing. As Izuku would walk towards All Might with the angelic sword, All Might would yell for him not to slash him, you villain. However, Izuku would slash All Might as all of his wounds would be healed. Izuku would glare down at All Might and before telling him that he shouldn't be judging others just by some random thing that happened to be done. You know that, All Might. You're a hero. Why, you happen to yell at anyone who's a villain who comes at you with a sword, huh? I mean, sure, you have the right to assume things, but I'm a UA student after all. You don't have to be so crazy all the time, and even going so far to say that I'm a villain to Nezu. You're quite the strange one, All Might. I've lost all respect for you. Izuku would say as his eyes would flicker black right as Izuku said that one sentence before going back to his normal green. As Izuku would be walking back, Bakugo and Izuku would be congratulated for being able to beat All Might, as All Might would stand up before walking back over towards where Nezu was. As All Might walked there, Nezu would hit him on the top with a cane provided by Recovery Girl, yelling that how stupid was he, going 100% full power on a kid. Just didn't make sense. He would say, oh, I wasn't going 100%, Nezu. I was just trying to show him no mercies. It was like a respect thing, showing that I was still going 50% power. As respect, it wouldn't be so respectful if I was only going 1%, would it? He would say as Nezu would only glare at him. Shut it, All Might. You know what I mean. As the rest of Izuku's classmates would end up going, many of them would end up passing, succeeding, while many of them would also not end up passing. As we now see Izuku stretching in the middle of his room before going out to meet the rest of his class in a mall. As Izuku would end up doing that, would end up just sitting down, not really having anything to shop for, as it was merely just to get together with the rest of the class after they had a week break since finals had just finished. And so they had a week break before the summer training camp did end up beginning. So that Izuku would be sitting there as all of a sudden a hooded figure would end up sitting down next to Izuku. Hello, Izuku. I wish to speak with you. And that is where part 4 of What If Deku Had a Leveling System is going to be left off. I hope you all are enjoying the series so far, and if you are, please consider subscribing as it really helps this channel out, and you can even be notified when the other parts of this series do end up coming out. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.